Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be a perfume declutter video. I don't tend to declutter my fragrances that often, I do it twice a year, but really the truth of being a perfume reviewer on YouTube is that you buy too much fragrance. As much as I try not to, as much as I'm sampling, I still end up making mistakes, I still end up blind buying, and I still end up having some perfume regrets. And I also just end up feeling a little bit overwhelmed. There's no way I can organically use up 125 bottles of fragrance. It's never going to happen. So the only way that I can actually make space in my collection is by decluttering. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology even, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing, and please also like this video if you do like this kind of content. So in this video I've got 7 fragrances to talk about, and actually when I'm about to declutter fragrances, probably a couple of months beforehand, I will put them in a kind of fragrance purgatory, a separate area from the rest of my collection where they will just hang around until I go back to them, retry them and decide which ones to declutter. And originally I had 10 fragrances, but 3 got saved at the last moment. So this video is 7. So let's get on with this. So if you watch my videos, I don't think this one is going to come as a surprise to you, because when I first talked about this one, I said that I wasn't really sure about this one, and it just wasn't what I expected basically. So this one's Green Lover by Lolita Lempicka. So this fragrance, I feel like loads and loads of people absolutely love this, and I can see why. It's very friendly, it's a vanilla and sort of orangey mint fragrance, and it's also got this kind of zingy feeling underneath it, which I guess is the gin and tonic note. I would never describe this as something with juniper. It's not quite as sharp as that, but it's got like a little bit of a lifting feeling underneath it. And actually when you smell it from the nozzle, the gin and tonic note is really quite prominent, and I actually really like it from the nozzle. It's just when I've got this on that I'm not so sure about it, because to me, when I'm wearing it in the dry down, it smells of Tic Tacs. It smells of orange and mint Tic Tacs, and that's not really how I want to smell. I think really how I would imagine this fragrance was to be a really zingy, refreshing mint, quite fresh, but also just with a bit of sweetness from vanilla. And this really isn't that at all. It's more orangey to me. It smells more orangey than it does minty, especially in the dry down. It just isn't living up to my expectations for it, but I do think this is a good fragrance. I think it's interesting, and I think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. There's no heavy ambroxan, there's no isoe super, there's no cashmere and choking me or anything in this fragrance. I think overall this fragrance is absolutely fine. It's long lasting, it's affordable, it ticks so many boxes, but it's just not my personal taste. So that's Green Lover by Lolita Lempicka. So this next fragrance might be a little bit more of a shocker. So this one's Dolce Garden by Dolce & Gabbana. And this fragrance, I think it's really loved on YouTube, and I can see why. I can see why I loved it to begin with. It's a tropical floral, it's vanilla, it's coconut. The coconut is super milky, creamy. It's just really a very summery fragrance, this one. And I can see why it's loved. But this one just seems to have something that bothers me, and that's a slight plasticiness. So I only really worked this out after I tried Gucci Memoir. And Gucci Memoir is a very super plasticky fragrance in the beginning, which it then sort of calms down. It becomes a really nice fragrance in the dry down. And I was looking at the notes and I was thinking, what is this that's causing this plasticiness? And I worked out that it was the almond. And this fragrance also has almonds. So I think it's probably the almond that's causing the plasticiness in this one. And it's something you only really smell if you smell it close up, which if I'm wearing a fragrance, I do smell it close up. I think in the air, this is a beautiful fragrance. It leaves a lovely trail, and I can see why people would love this one. I've got other coconuts in my collection, such as Coconut Fizz by Guerlain, and I also have Kayali Utopia, which I think is really the fragrance that could directly replace this one in my collection. So yeah, Dolce Garden is just not something I feel like I need to keep, and I know it's super popular on YouTube, but it's just not doing it for me. So that one's going Dolce Garden. So the next fragrance is my last Lattafa fragrance that's still standing, and this one is Lattafa Ameer Al Oud Intense Oud. All of the other Lattafa fragrances from my collection have disappeared. I bought 3 in total in 2021, and the rest have been decluttered. I've tried a few other samples from people, And I can't say that anything has really grabbed me, but this was the best of the bunch. So this one is a sugary, nutty vanilla fragrance really overall, but it's also got some warmth to it. There's also sort of a leathery feel in the dry down, and there's also a very synthetic feeling oud as well, but it's quite a light synthetic oud. In the beginning of this fragrance there's a touch of saffron, but actually it doesn't bother me. Sometimes saffron can be super plasticky. It's not super plasticky in this fragrance. This one's supposed to be a dupe for By the Fireplace, and I didn't really realise just how close it was until I retried By the Fireplace. And yeah, I say how close it was. It's not mega close, but it definitely does have a feel of By the Fireplace. This one just lacks that kind of smokiness that you get in By the Fireplace. I think really this fragrance got so much hype, and when I bought it back in 2021 it was something like, I don't know, £10, £11. It was mega cheap, and for that kind of price I can see why it would be hyped, because it is interesting. It is, you know, something that's close to that Maison Margiela, close-ish to that Maison Margiela. I can see why it would get love. You know, it's a very likeable scent profile, isn't it? Sugary vanilla. But I can equally see why people wouldn't like it, because Lattafa fragrances all have a very distinctive feel to me in the ones that I've tried. I haven't tried any recently because I just got turned off by my hit rate with them. I just didn't like most of the ones that I tried. And really the ones that I tried weren't intense loves. They weren't things that, even if I vaguely liked them, I didn't feel like I loved them. And I think I'm ready to let this one go now, because if I'm not wearing it, I don't think I need it. This fragrance, I think if you like things like Mercedes Club Black, you might like things like this. But I just think that, you know, if I've got fragrances like Kayali's Vanilla 28, which I infinitely prefer to this one, I don't think I need this one in my collection. So that's Lattafa's Ameer Al Oud Intense Oud. I just want to show you actually, because this happened with my other Lattafa fragrances. Can you see that atomizer there? There's something very strange going on with that atomizer. And I'm not sure what Lattafa do, whether they buy some cheap metal and that it corrodes because of the fragrance. I'm not sure, but I just think it's a bit weird with Lattafa fragrances. Maybe they need to spend a little bit more on their nozzles, but still a very cheap fragrance, and you know, I can see why people would buy it at 10 quid. So that's Lattafa Ameer Al Oud Intense Oud. So the next fragrance is one by Ralph Lauren, and it's called Woman, and I bought this after filming a Loved and Lost video. I think I filmed that back in November last year, I think. And I'd been looking for the intense version of this fragrance, because that was the one that I really wanted to try. That was the one that I talked about in that video. I couldn't find it, so I went for the EDP, the original version, which is this one of that fragrance instead, and just thought I'd try it, see what it was like. And actually when I first got this, I wore it a lot, and I wore it mostly to work, and I just think it's absolutely perfect for work because it's really inoffensive. It's, you know, it's pleasant, it's not too strong, it's pretty, but it just doesn't really excite me. So by March, I'd kind of stopped wearing this one, and by June, I looked in my collection again and I saw it and I thought, what am I doing? Why am I keeping this? I should retry it and see whether I want to keep this. So I retried it, and again, I just didn't feel that excited by it. It's basically a fruity floral, so it's tuberose, but it's also got some fruity notes. It's got rhubarb, very noticeably for me. It's also got some blackcurrant and pear very distinctively in the opening. The pear in the opening is quite sparkly and bright. It's a very bright fragrance in the opening. It dries down slightly creamier because it's got sandalwood. And I guess also that nuttiness with the hazelnut as well is also present in the fragrance, which adds a bit of creaminess to it. I think this one is just, yeah, it's pretty, it's likeable, it's just not exciting for me, and that's why this one is going. As well, this is going because I'm at that point, that magical point when fragrance collecting, where you don't have that emotional relationship with the fragrance when you first get it, and I haven't formed those memories, so I feel like if I'm not that bothered by this one, it should just go now rather than languishing in my collection unloved. So yeah, this one's going. Ralph Lauren Woman. So the next fragrance is again one that I bought this year, and this one's Boucheron plus Vendôme. So this fragrance is really pretty actually. It's a white floral, kind of citrusy opening, but with some honey. And the honey here isn't really heavy. It's not like a beeswaxy honey or a syrupy honey. It's quite a light feeling, almost solar feeling fragrance in the beginning. and it's just generally a little bit sweet, but it dries down into a shampoo-y fragrance. It's a little bit soapy in the dry down, but it also just retains that sweetness and the white florals. And yeah, it's a bright, sunny fragrance, perfect for work because it's so crowd pleasing, but it's one that does fade on me after about 3-4 hours. If I were more bothered, I'd probably take a decant, but I think this one can just leave my collection. And the reason for that really is that it's not replaced any of my other work fragrances. I can't say that I love this one more than my other work fragrances, and I think really if I want honey and I want white florals, I'm always going to choose something like Elisab Le Parfum. I think this fragrance though, if you are looking for something that's on the lighter side compared with that Elisab, this is actually a really good choice. And I think that really for the price point, and also the fact that this is the first fragrance that I've tried from Boucheron, it's completely not put me off. I would actually really like to try Jaipur Bracelet because I think that one's meant to be a dupe for Pure Poison. And I've been looking at Pure Poison because I really like Pure Poison. So I don't know whether to just bite the bullet and buy Pure Poison or whether to try Jaipur Bracelet first and see how I go. If anybody's tried both Pure Poison and Jaipur Bracelet, can you please let me know which one you think I should go for? So yeah, that's Plus Vendôme by Boucheron. So the next fragrance is the one in this little group that I think has been causing me the most anxiety about decluttering it. This is the one that I've been going backwards and forwards on a little bit, and I'm still not entirely convinced. So this one's Nina Ricci, Ricci. So this fragrance is just quite different. It's a rhubarb and rose fragrance, which are okay nowadays. You know, you think of Delina, don't you? You think of quite a few other Delina-based fragrances that have come after Delina. This was way before Delina. This was released in 2009, and I think this does it in a slightly different way to Delina. So here, the rhubarb is still quite sweet. It's not really that tart, but it is noticeably rhubarb, and I really like that about this fragrance. The rhubarb isn't so sour that it's off-putting. Also, the rose in this fragrance, as it dries down, it becomes sort of syrupy, almost boozy, really. And I find that really nice. There's also some white florals, and the white florals have a kind of spicy aspect, and there's also some patchouli. This fragrance is really getting hard to find now, so that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to declutter it, because I know if I declutter it and end up regretting it, it will be hard for me to re-find. But I've worn this twice in the past year, so I think this one needs to go. So that's Nina Ricci, Ricci. So the final fragrance is one that I won in an Instagram giveaway, and I was just really curious to try this fragrance because it's so famous. But I also had in the back of my mind that I might not love it, and that really proved to be the case. So this fragrance is Bandit or Bandit by Robert Piguet, and this fragrance was released in 1944. So this fragrance I made an entire video about, which I will leave linked above. So I did a 3-parter, and the third part of that video is about this fragrance. But I just really enjoyed looking at the history of this fragrance and learning about it. And it does have a really interesting backstory. So if you are interested, go and check out that video. So this fragrance has actually been voted the best Chypre fragrance, the best leather fragrance, the best female marketed fragrance for men to wear. It's one of those fragrances that is really well respected, but has also been highly reformulated over the intervening years. I mean, if it was released back in 1944, you wouldn't expect an 80-year-old fragrance to remain the same, would you? It's just not going to happen with all the rule changes that go on in fragrance. So this one has a lot of oak moss. It's definitely a soapier kind of Chypre fragrance. It also has an intense smokiness to it, and the smokiness here really makes me think of bonfires. It also makes me think of diesel exhaust. So this kind of smell I just find quite acrid, and it makes me think of 1950s London, this fragrance. It makes me think of the smog before the Clean Air Act of 1951. That's really what I think of. I think of, you know, watching old films trying to recapture the smog of London. This one, I just don't think it's me. It's not something I love. I'm not really a true kind of vintage loving person with fragrance. There's a point at which vintage becomes unwearable, and this one for me is reaching unwearable. The dry down of this fragrance is much better than the opening. The opening is quite green and it's quite strong, and yeah, it then gets into that kind of smoky bonfire diesel engine thing, which is really not me. And then it kind of levels out a little bit and just becomes into this kind of soapy oak moss with a sort of slight smokiness to it. Yeah, this one just isn't me, but I did really enjoy getting to try this one. So I think this one's pretty rare now, and I don't feel like this one should just languish in my collection unloved. So I feel like this should find a loving new home. So that's Bandit or Bandit by Piguet. So that's the final fragrance in this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, have you tried any of the fragrances I've decluttered in this video? What do you think of them? Would you have saved any of the ones that I've decluttered from the declutter pile? I'd really be interested to know. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.